So can you tell me, how long have you been an urban explorer for, roughly?
Probably about 15 years. First came to the city about, gotta say, 20, 25 years ago. And a few years into it, I just fell in love with the Packard plant and all the old buildings that you could just roam through.
So you've seen a lot of change in the time that you've been here for 25 years.
Yeah. Well, metal prices went through the roof, all over the world, really. So everybody started scrapping. Used to go into these old buildings, and there'd be machinery, just really interesting things to photograph and just explore,
So your interest or involvement would have included not just exploring, but also photography and some scrapping?
Yep, I used to scrap metal back before the prices, got all jacked. And people would come out of their houses and thank me for hauling away this, pile of scrap steel in the yard next to them.
So and they didn't understand the value of what they were giving away?
Well, no, it wasn't worth much back then. But then the prices went through the roof, and I realized, well, there's a lot of money in this, and there's a lot of old crap laying around. So I'd start scrapping. Then I realized people really aren't into it. They think of scrappers as just somebody ripping off the siding of somebody's house, or something like ripping out copper pipes, So the term scrapper is it's not a nice term anymore. It's not what it used to be. You're considered a thief these days if you admit to being a scrapper. I mean, I haven't done it in years, but had a few accidents that told me to stop.
I know they've been fairly serious accidents. How did they occur? What were the actual injuries, and how did they occur?
Well, it's funny because they happened 3 years in a row, all on Thanksgiving weekend. Started about 8-9 years ago, and one was just a couple blocks from here, and it was an old grocery store. The roof was caving in. I went inside and was pulling out some wire, and didn't realize there was an alarm on the place. There was actually electricity in there, and I almost electrocuted myself with some 440 volt power box.
And I could imagine if something like that happened, you wouldn't exactly have a telephone handy for calling emergency services.
Not back then, no. I probably would have sat there for a while.
You were alone at the time, or with someone?
I was alone, yeah.
And what about the other accident? I believe you had an accident in the plant we are at now, which is the Grand Trunk building.
Yeah, this is the third accident, the last one. And I was opening up some old valves. This is used to be a refrigerated building. Caught on fire years ago. It burned for about a week. The firemen couldn't put it out because of all the burning insulation. Anyway, the refrigeration units, I was taking some valves off. It blew up in my face with ammonia and knocked me on my ass and filled the room with ammonia. Luckily, I was close to the roof, so I was able to scramble up the stairs, but I lost this eye. It went blind. It's just, and this eye came back, but I was blind for about a good 3 months before this eye came back.
For 3 months you had no eyesight at all?
Well, it slowly came back, but it took a good year before it was, to the point it is now, and it's still not that great, but I get by.
Okay, so to continue the conversation, the force of the blast of the ammonia knocked you backwards.
Yeah, knocked me back a few feet onto my butt. I didn't, my eyes were stinging. Luckily, it was raining out. I made it to the top here, where we're at now, and was able to wash it with water, rainwater. And I made my way home, pretty much blind, down some stairs. I think it's like 6 flights, 7 flights. I didn't go see a doctor right away, and that was a big mistake. I thought it was going to be all right, and it wasn't. And yeah, But
So
made it through.
when the eyesight didn't come back in a hurry, you realised it was time to go and seek medical treatment.
Yeah.
And for 3 months you were totally blind?
Almost totally blind, yeah. I had to wear super heavy dark glasses, and I could make out some shapes, with one of my eyes.
So at the time of that accident you were alone?
Yeah.
So traditionally you always explored alone or not?
No, not all the time. Most of the time, I'd say.
Most of the time. Can you tell a person who isn't very familiar with the city of Detroit or who hasn't done any urban exploring, can you tell them a few of the key landmarks around town, what they're most notable for, which your favourites are?
Well, the Packard's always been my favorite. It's, I believe, the largest abandoned structure in the world, or at least the United States. It's almost, I think, a mile long almost, and it's just it was just a lot of fun. It took years to learn the place, and there's tunnels and 3 floors, huge cranes. There used to be Bridgeport machines and metal lathes laying around, old cars, campers, boats, all kinds of just weird stuff inside.
So the Packard is definitely your favourite of all?
Yeah, I like the Packard.
I believe there's some developments with the Packard. It has obviously sat there abandoned for the best part of 60 years, but there is a new owner and investor who's keen to develop the site, or at least part of the site, and I believe he's even planning to use it as something of a concert venue.
Yeah, Fernando Pezuela, I believe his name is. He's from Peru, and he bought the place and wants to fix it up and make it work. I mean, if he could do it, it'd really bring back that area, because there's not a lot going on.
If he has the time and the money, it's a possibility then.
Yeah, it sounds like he's got the money. I mean, he's one of the biggest developers in Lima.
And he does actually have a history of redeveloping.
He does, yeah.
So his history of doing refurbs is quite promising. And I believe even the Detroit Symphony Orchestra are having some involvement in his redevelopments.
Apparently they want to have a concert with the DSO at the Packard, as it is right now. I mean, I'm sure they'll bring in seating and all that, but it'll be fixed up. But still, the Packard is nowhere near ready to be used in any way, really.
I guess you could say the Packard at this present stage is not really a trafficable environment for the general public, maybe for scrappers or for urban explorers or for the adventurous, but for the general public, such as symphony concert goers, it may need a bit of work done before they open it to the general public.
Yeah.
So when is that concert due to be taking place?
September
2014.
14, yeah.
So I believe one of your accidents involved a broken leg after a fall at one of the Detroit abandoned sites.
Yeah, I was in a building in Eastern Market, and I was in like the 3rd floor, and it was in a sunlit area, so my eyes were all adjusted to light, and I walked into another room where it was very dark. Didn't see the hole in the floor. It went down to the 1st floor, and I just, all of a sudden I was walking, next thing I know I'm falling, and halfway down I remember thinking, I'm falling a long way. And then I broke my femur, my upper leg bone, my wrist, and my jaw, broke a few teeth out, and I spent about a few months in a wheelchair.
Well, I know they breed them tough in Detroit, but that's real proof of some of the things that can happen to a person that resides in the city.
You gotta be careful. Yeah.
So you were in a wheelchair bound for 3 months.
Yeah.
Did any of this curb your appetite for adventurous urban exploring around the city? Did it make you think twice, or did it just slow you down?
It did slow me down a little bit. I was a lot more cautious. I don't like going in that one building anymore where I fell. I completely stopped scrapping. But I still like to go through some of the old buildings. I don't do it as much anymore, though. I've seen them all.
You've seen them all. The pickings aren't as good as they once would have been.
There's not a lot left to scrap. Taking it all. So most of them turn to thieving,
Detroit's notorious crime rate. Is that what you're referring to, or?
Well, yeah, that's a lot of it. A lot of drugs, a lot of drug addicts, and they got to get their money from drugs somehow.
I believe you're active not only in exploring, but also you've been quite notable with an internet presence in the form of a blog detailing your daily life as a resident of the city of Detroit. Can you tell us a bit about the blog?
It's called Junkie Chronicles. Find it easily online. It's just stories of mine, not necessarily all Detroit, but just stories of me, of what I've gone through, in my life as a drug addict, and other things. Some of it's exploring. I've had a lot happen in my life. I started a blog about 8 years ago, and it hasn't gotten a lot of attention, but what attention it has gotten, it's got a lot of positive feedback. Somebody read it and decided that they wanted to publish it, so I have a book being coming out actually this week.
The book's being published this week. Tell us a bit about the publication. Is it a verbatim copy of what appears on the blog?
It is. It's been cleaned up a little bit, because when I write in the blog, I write stream of conscious and things get screwed up. So it's been edited a bit, but all the stories are 100% true. It's not just about Detroit, but just my experiences, in the past, since I was a kid,
So it is a drug-related blog.
It is. Much of it is a drug-related blog and book. It's only 130 pages, but it has my photography in it, some of my photography, not a lot, but a few. About a photograph for every story. Yeah, I'm kind of excited. Didn't expect somebody to pick it up like that, try and make it into a book.
And can you tell us a bit about, from your own personal experience and your own personal viewpoint, what the life of a drug addict is like?
It's hard, Never would have thought I'd had to deal with that when I was a kid, But I made some choices to experiment, and they went sideways,
How long would you say that you've been a drug addict?
I've been using, for about 25, 30 years. But I wasn't an addict all those years.
What would you say is the drug of addiction in your case?
Heroin. There's lots of it here in Detroit.
Is it the most popular drug in Detroit, or just one of many?
Crack and heroin. Weed is probably the most popular. It's legal now in Detroit to carry an ounce.
You mentioned the hardness of being an addict. Can you explain a bit more about what you mean by that? Is it the cost of the drugs, the availability?
Yeah, it's the cost. It's the worry of being arrested. I'm a big opponent of the drug war. I think it's ridiculous. I think we're becoming a nation of prisons. Privatized prisons. It's just sick and wrong, I feel. It's like modern day slavery. Federal prisons shouldn't be put into the hands of private corporations where they can make money off them. And I think that's just the wrong way to go. And the world follows our lead. The world follows our lead, really. If we say drugs should be illegal, it seems like the rest of the world says, oh, well, we have to make them illegal too. It's been bad news. And things are changing, though. Things are changing. It started with the marijuana legalization that's going on all over the country. And there's finally been a big push to look at the prison system, and why should we put non-violent people in prison, for something they're going to do either way. You're just creating jobs on the street by keeping these drugs illegal. And kids are like, oh, I can make $1,000 a day selling crack cocaine on the corner. Well, that shouldn't be that way. It should be distributed in a more responsible way. To registered addicts, whatever. Decriminalization, legalization, I'm not sure. It needs to be studied, I feel. I'm no academic, but that's my soapbox.
Thank you. I appreciate your honesty. Can you tell us something about issues pertaining to unemployment in Detroit? Do you think that the drug trade could be a byproduct of a shortage of legitimate jobs for Detroiters?
I think the drug trade is minimum wage jobs. Who wants to work at McDonald's when you can stand on a corner, hang out with your buddies, drinking 40s and slinging rocks or bags of dope? You've got these kids, that don't have a lot of direction. So it's kind of a no-brainer for them what to do. No, I don't think that it's necessarily because of a lack of jobs. But I could be wrong.
Detroit declared bankruptcy on the 18th of July 2013, which is exactly 1 year ago today. Matt, can you tell me what your vision for the future of Detroit is? Are things bleak? Are things getting worse, or are they improving?
No, I think they're definitely improving. I mean, it looks that way anyway. I've seen Detroit just get better and better.
What was some of the biggest changes or improvements you saw? Were they mainly located in the downtown area, or is it?
It does center from the downtown area, yeah. There's more businesses going in, things are getting fixed up. I mean, the downtown Woodward was all shuttered, 15 years ago. It was just boarded up windows, and now they're all open businesses, most of them. So it's come a long way. It's going in the right direction, I feel. It's just going to take some time, It's not going to happen overnight. I've gotten a name for myself for showing other people around, other journalists. And I had National Geographic's a crew that works for National Geographic come through for the Drugs Incorporated series.
When was that?
Detroit. That was 3 years ago, I think. And several journalists, Aaron Snedden from Europe. He's like an AP photographer.
I believe you also showed some people from the BBC around Detroit. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, that was fun. I generally know the sites. I don't know the history of the buildings that well, so I wind up being more of a bodyguard almost. Not a bodyguard, but someone who knows the sites. I'm a big guy, a little bit intimidating, so they feel better about having somebody along from the area, and I know this. I know where the sites are, where they would want to film. So
I think you make a key point. One of the important things about staying safe in Detroit in general, either as a resident or a visitor or an explorer, is having some local knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, Detroit isn't nearly as dangerous as it's made out to be in the press. It's just not. People just don't know how to handle themselves in Detroit because they're not familiar with it. But anybody who lives here knows how to walk down the street. I mean, we all run into problems now and again, but for the most part, you've lived here for a while, you know how to handle yourself. And a lot of people don't, and they're nervous, and it shows, and predators feed on fear,
So you'd say it is a livable city, but it has its challenges.
It's changed so much. It's so much nicer. I mean, over the 20 years I've seen it, it was bad 20 years ago, but they call it Midtown. It was the Cass Corridor. It was notorious for being the ghetto. There were hookers and pimps and all these dive bars, shootings, and that whole area they call it Midtown now. That's all changed.
So that was the legendary Cass Corridor,
Yes, it was.
situated on Woodward Avenue and Cass Avenue.
Yep. South of Wayne State University, down to Cass Park and Temple.
So you'd say that Detroit has safe areas and less safe or even unsafe areas.
Yeah. I mean, the corridor now is a great place to, there's a lot of investment going on. Dan Gilbert in Hockeytown or Foxtown, that area, and the Cass Corridor and Foxtown are slowly growing together. They'll eventually join up, and it'll be one big strip of nice, homogenized living, gentrified.
For a potential visitor to the city of Detroit, can you maybe help them out with a bit of local knowledge by perhaps suggesting which areas are the safer or nicer areas, and of course those that are the less safe, potentially dangerous?
Midtown, Corktown, Woodbridge, Palmer Park's not too bad, but it's a fine line there.
Downtown?
Downtown is wonderful. Anything north of there, along Woodward, you're fine. All the way up to Grand Boulevard. It's completely changes. It's safe.
Travelling up Woodward Avenue, you intersect with Grand Boulevard. Once you get beyond that, does the atmosphere change?
It does a little bit. It's more old school Detroit, but there's still a lot of businesses, going on. It does get a little bit hairier. It's not so, built up, but there is, there's some nice areas.
So broadly, generally, the areas around downtown or close to downtown are safer than once you start venturing further north or west.
Yeah, a lot of the violence happens in the neighborhoods. I think that's where a lot of it goes on. Up near 7 Mile, and anywhere there's a lot of small houses, that are packed together. You get a lot of young kids, and they all want to prove themselves. They all want to carry a gun. Not all, but it's more likely.
What sort of crimes would you mentioned guns? That's an interesting and important point. What sort of crimes would be likely to be going on in those rougher areas, the sketchy areas that you mentioned? What would be some of the typical crimes or the more commonly reported crimes?
Well, if I'm out of my element in some other neighborhood where people don't know me, I might get jacked just because I'm white and they don't know me. I'm an easy target, or anybody really. But amongst the neighborhood people, sure, drug dealers ripping off each other and just getting pissed off over whatever problems they have.
So some of the likely crimes might be carjackings, robberies.
Yeah, there's carjackings, robberies. Yeah, it's all kinds. Rape, murders, it happens.
Okay, so maybe we could just discuss a few more of the famous landmarks around the city. Feel free to discuss any that either are empty and abandoned, or those that are still functioning, or those that have perhaps been through a noticeable refurb. Can you tell me some of your other favourite Detroit landmarks or destinations, either for admiring or exploring or photographing?
Well, probably the most photographed one is Michigan Central Station, the MCS building, down off Michigan Avenue. I'm not sure how tall it is, probably 25 stories tall. Just a magnificent old train station. And it towers over the west side. And it's completely gutted, and it's a mess inside. They keep talking about fixing it up, but nothing ever really gets done. You know, they'll put a few windows in it and then it'll stop. It hasn't really gone anywhere. But it used to be a great place to explore inside.
I believe it's a bit harder to explore.
They fenced it in. You know, you used to be able to just walk right in, and you could walk to the top, and you know, you had a beautiful view of the city. You know, but I think they got it fenced in, so it's not so easy. And they have police patrolling it. There are security guards.
So at one stage it would have been a popular spot for anyone to gain easy access and do a bit of exploring. Now it would be more challenging.
It would be more challenging, yeah. Not impossible.
How would you describe the look of the building? What, for someone that's not familiar with it or hasn't seen it, how would you describe the Michigan Central Station?
I would say early 1900s style architecture. I'm not sure who built it. I believe the same person that did Grand Central Station, though. So in that old school style of, you know, large stone and brick. Magnificent building.